Hi guys, welcome to a new video. So now I've got to the point of describing the character traits, personality of the sign of Virgo. So first thing to note about Virgo, their element is Earth, and they are the mutable mode actually for Earth. So in Earth, the hierarchy is that you have Capricorn, which is actually the last Earth sign, which is kind of strange, but they are the cardinal, so they're technically the creator, the initiator of this Earth. Taurus is then the stabilizer and the persevering sort of energy of Earth. And then Virgo, which obviously is the sign that is the topic of this video, they are the mutable Earth, so they adapt and they change the Earth. They're a bit more open, flexible, less stubborn, and open to external influences, and they'll kind of adjust their behaviour accordingly to outside influences to ensure that they get on with more people or just they meet their agendas in a different way. They're kind of just constantly open for evolution of the soul and new experiences as a mutable polarity, if you like, mutable mode. So Virgo is they're symbolized, their real life example is like a forest or like a jungle because they're mutable. So of course Earth as a soul element is naturally static, it doesn't really move, but Virgo kind of does a little bit more than the other two because it's the mutable mode and it's kind of more sort of active in that sense because it's trying to change itself and adapt itself according to, external stimuli that it's receiving from the outside world. So, for a real world example for Virgo, I do think a forest is quite apt to describe them, or a jungle. Anywhere where there's trees and there's plants that are constantly growing, because obviously the landscape, the kind of ecosphere, the ecosystem of like a rainforest or anything, it's kind of open to continuous change, There's wildlife everywhere. They are having to constantly adapt to the environmental conditions of their habitat so that they don't die off and become extinct. Trees obviously are growing all the time, plants and flowers are growing all the time. So in a sense they have that element of change about them in nature, like in the real world, because they are this sort of they're constantly growing and evolving, which reflects kind of the more mutable mode of Virgo. Now, kind of the mythology of Virgo is that they are a virgin, so not really a virgin in the typical what we would describe as a virgin. It's more a virgin as in they're just pure minded. They are kind of not tainted, their soul in any way. They're very pure in intention and how they approach everything in life. And they are very critical, but they want perfection, they want cleanliness, they want peaceful surroundings, they want to be logical and clear with their thought patterns and even their emotions at all times. That's kind of the symbolism. So Virgo is like a virgin woman who wants very clear thought processes. She is true to the earth element that she belongs to in her heart. She is like that. She is not tainted by other people around her. She doesn't let them influence her in a bad way. It's very much purity and innocence, but not in a naive way. Innocence in a logical, grounded to earth, clear-minded sort of way. But it is still this sort of innocent aura. It's not like there's nothing sort of sneaky about it. There's nothing sort of evil about it. It's kind of a very pure, intense, and kindly woman, but it is also very strict and critical in its approach to perfection as well. And that's the symbology in myths, basically, of Virgo as the sign when it was first created from. It was kind of from that sort of take on things in mythology. So the whole purpose of Virgo is like they want to be practical, they want success in life, they do care about money and finances quite naturally, obviously. Not as much money conscious as Taurus or even Capricorn, I would say. They're more about order, structure, and physical health of their body, health of their mental states, their emotions. They want to be quite pure and untainted in pretty much everything in their approach to life. They do want perfection, but they're also grounded enough to know that perfection is kind of pretty much impossible in the world. But yeah, they do want this sort of perfection all the time, and they strive for it, even though they know that it's not really achievable. But that's kind of the ethos of them. Like a difference between them and a Taurus, let's say, is that they are much less stubborn. They're open to other people's viewpoints. They're more sort of Taurus is more self-indulgent. They're kind of more they like to treat themselves because of the Venus influence as well. They kind of want to treat themselves. They want to indulge in life's pleasures, feel good because of Venus. All these sensorial pleasures they kind of want to indulge themselves in. They will make enough money to be comfortable and work hard in order to be able to achieve that for themselves. But once they've got that, they do like to spend it to an extent if they feel they've deserved it, and it's on things that are sensorial and kind of wealth producing and just they want abundance. But Virgo, they're more about health of the physical body, so they're less about self indulgence. They're more about being orderly and responsible, not as strictly in that sense as the Capricorn, actually, but they are like about not so much about control or power or authority over others, which is more Capricorn. Virgo is more sort of like they want order, they want structure in everything in their life, like literally everything. And it is with themselves too, but they are much more interested in the health of the physical body in themselves and then the health of their mental state, the health of their emotions they're experiencing on a daily basis. They want to be pure, free, not corrupt at all in their emotions or in their mental state. Of course, that's quite hard to achieve because humans are never perfect, but that's what they want to achieve. Whereas Taurus is more indulge the body, give it the pleasures it wants because they're ruled by Venus. Virgo actually is the sign where Venus falls, so Venus is technically dead. So, in a sense, Virgo doesn't allow themselves to indulge their body in all those earthly pleasures, which obviously Taurus loves to do. Virgo doesn't let themselves do that. They're more concerned about health of the physical body. They're more concerned about um, making sure that they're healthy on a physical level of reality, at an emotional and mental level of reality as well. They're much more focused on that. They're more orderly than Taurus. They have more energy than Taurus physically. They're not as lazy as Taurus. They're a bit more, I want to say a bit more goal orientated, but then at the same time, Taurus is also very goal orientated. All of the earth signs are. But I would say Capricorn's the most goal orientated, the most strict on themselves to be goal orientated, because Virgo likes to change a little bit more. There's kind of a paradox in a sense in the Virgo character because they're an earth sign, they want to be stable, they want security for themselves like all the earth signs, but they kind of contradict and ruin it for themselves, even in a way, because they're mutable mode and mutable once changed, they don't want to stay the same. So almost Virgos kind of self sabotage in themselves because they want to be stable, they want the earthly security, but then they also don't because they want to be changing and they kind of want the excitement of diversity in their life and they want to experience all the things that Earth has to offer them because they want this change and they actually get bored if things stay the same. But because they're Earth, they still want this security and this wealth production and, reassurance in that sense and stability. So it's kind of a paradox in their character that they probably will like be a bit confused about for most of their life because they do want this security, like Taurus and Capricorn, but they are the most anxious out of those three to change. They're the least willing out of those three to have everything stay secure and stay the same, despite the fact that Earth wants them to be secure and stable and kind of stay the same. Now they are ruled by Mercury on the Earth side of Mercury, so they are very analytical, very logical. They do approach everything more from a logical than an emotional perspective. They are more into practical gestures, like in a romantic relationship, because Venus has fallen in Virgo. They're not very romantic in a stereotypical sense. They're more like they will do practical gestures to show their affection and their love towards you. They're not the type of person who would send you flowers and chocolates and give you really romantic, lovey-dovey gifts every Valentine's Day. They're not that type of person with their romantic expression. They're more sort of, their love language is a bit more practical, hands-on. It's more like they'll do little tasks and finish little jobs for you that you need to get done, and that's how they show you their affection and their love in that sense. So to have your personal birth chart Venus and Virgo is going to be a little bit. It's kind of the worst placement for Venus to be in. I'm not going to lie because Venus has fallen in Virgo. So if your personal birth chart has Venus in Virgo, you might struggle a bit to actually express your love toward your partner in a way that they could like easily understand, unless they have Venus Virgo too, or they have Venus in another Earth sign, Taurus or Capricorn, that have this sort of, this logical, grounded, stable, realistic sort of quality to their thought processes in terms of everything Venus entails, the same as you, because then obviously you're going to have that connection and you're going to not have as many misunderstandings. But especially, I would say, with fire sign Venuses people, they probably will be quite extravagant, quite stereotypically romantic and over the top, and they might not see your expression of affection back as strongly if your Venus is in Virgo, because you are a bit more hands on. Like, you will fix things that are broken for your lover to so that you care about them. You won't say I love you like very often or like all the time. You're not very clingy. You do kind of, you want security again, but you also do kind of let your partner have independence as well. And it's about meeting a balance between those two, which confuses you quite a lot, I would probably imagine, I would guess. Um, but yeah, with Venus Virgo, it's very practical. Love is not gussy, it's not like affectionate. They don't lose themselves. They definitely don't lose themselves in love and romance. They're very practical about it, very grounded about it because they are an earth sign. But obviously, they can love, it's just that they will show it in a way that you need to be a little bit more observant to notice what they're showing, like with romance. Um, when it comes to Virgo rising, it's actually quite a common rising sign to have. It seems Gemini and Virgo are very common rising signs to have. So obviously, rising is your external appearance, and it's also the sign born in your first house. So to have your rising sign in Virgo, you're going to look probably quite tall and slim because you are hardworking. You kind of move quite a lot because you're always working and being practical. Um, you're going to have like quite small eyes. You might have a mischievous sort of look like Gemini because of Mercury, but probably less mischievous and youthful. It's more sort of serious, orderly, well put together. You're going to be very well groomed, immaculately dressed. Your hair's never going to be a mess. Your clothes are never going to be having holes in or stained. They're going to be ironed to perfection. You're going to look very well put together. You're going to express this kind of quite standard, traditional sort of look. You're not really going to be very like garish with your fashion sense. You're going to be pretty traditional. Like, you're not going to wear like crazy clothes or anything to try and show off your individuality. That's a very Aquarius thing, especially if it's their rise in Aquarius. Virgo is very traditional though, so they're not going to do anything like that. They're going to be quite in tune with the fashion trends of the moment. Like, whatever's trending and is fashionable in like, fashion at a given time in life, they're going to basically get on that trend and they're going to follow that too. They're not going to be very innovative with like making new fashion trends. They're going to do what's tried and true in terms of what is considered to be fashionable in the specific time in the rest of the world, pretty much. You're going to look quite logical. You're going to look quite discriminating, quite analytical if you have a Virgo rising. And this is even if you're not actually a Virgo sun. Now, Virgo Sun, you're going to take on all of these Virgo traits, obviously quite naturally. You're going to be quite assertive in your desire to sort of criticize people and demand perfection. You're going to be quite outspoken about that want that you have. Maybe it's even a need, I don't know, but it's like you're going to be quite assertive about that. A Moon Virgo is going to be less aggressive. The Moon Virgo is going to be a bit more inwardly turned because it is the Moon's energy, of course, not the Sun's energy. The Moon is more comfortable than the Sun in Virgo in general. So the Moon Virgo is going to be probably less outwardly critical of other people. They're probably as critical of other people as the Sun Virgo is, but they're less likely to express it openly. They're more likely to keep it to themselves, I would say. And they're more likely to criticize themselves more heavily than other people as well, I would say, although the Sun does do that too, and even rising sign Virgos, they even do that as well. They criticize themselves a lot, even if it's just the rising in Virgo, but especially with the Moon, I think they're very self-critical, probably, like more than Virgo in any other personal planet placement. Now, Mercury in Virgo, now this is a very good placement because first thing, obviously, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, so Virgo is one of Mercury's home signs and it's in dignity. But also, now there is some confusion about this point I'm going to make just going on a tangent for a second, is because um, traditional astrology will say Mercury is actually exalted, in other words, strengthened in the sign of Aquarius. But nowadays, most mainstream astrologers say that Virgo is actually the sign of Mercury's exaltation, along with its sign of dignity. Dignity meaning that it's one of the home signs for Mercury to be in, because it rules that sign, but that it's also the sign of Mercury's exaltation as well. And I'm going on mainstream astrology of the moment, so I consider to be um, that it's exalted in Virgo as well as dignified, because mainstream astrology nowadays will tell me that Neptune is actually the planet that's exalted in Aquarius, not Mercury. So I'm just going to go on the fact that Mercury is exalted in Virgo and not in Aquarius for this. So but either way, it's still a very good placement to have your personal Mercury in your birth chart in Virgo. And the reason it's still such a good placement, like either way, is because it's one of the home signs. Like that's never going to change. It's still one of the home signs for Mercury. You're going to be less probably chatty and talkative on the outside, as if your Mercury was in Gemini. Virgo is more written word, I would say, rather than spoken word. So I think you're going to be a bit more, your language and your skill with language is going to be a bit more channeled into writing stories, writing poems, sort of more linguistic things that are written word rather than spoken word, with communicating the ideas out loud in spoken word and performing them and exaggerating them almost. That's more Gemini. But the Virgo side of Mercury is a bit more sort of written word. It's a bit more communicate through writing, through reading, that sort of thing. But either way, it's a very good placement. You're very fortunate. You're going to be a gifted communicator, probably a gifted public speaker, although your sinus could probably get in the way of that with Virgo because they are more shy than Gemini. Um, but you're still going to be talented as a public speaker anyway. It's just whether or not you choose to show people that very often is more down to the rest of your chart in terms of what confidence you get given from the rest of your placements. But if you have prominent Virgo energy, you're probably quite a shy person. So if you have a lot of personal planets in Virgo, you're going to be very gifted at public speaking, but you're probably not very likely to show it very often, especially not as often as Gemini, because you are a bit more reserved and shy than the Gemini would be. And then Mars in Virgo. Now, this is quite interesting. It's basically somewhat of a workhorse, I would say, to have Mars in Virgo, because it's like they're very, very driven by work and they're motivated by being practical at all times. They are quite energetic because they want to be doing something all the time. They are opposite to Pisces, so they're not going to be like motivated by dreaming and thinking of spiritual matters, pondering those matters, meditation, all of those divine, out of this world things, the things that are intangible, the things we can't see, that they drive Mars and Pisces. But if you think about it, obviously there's a polarity. Virgo's the total opposite. So to have Mars and Virgo is they're not motivated by that in the slightest. They're very much motivated by what we can see, what is tangible, real world practical things, and they invest their energy and time because it's Mars. They're investing their motivation into these practical, like earthly tasks. So they will be great managers, Mars and Virgo, although they could be overly critical, and their aggression will also be channeled through Virgo if their Mars is what's in Virgo. So they could be quite incisive and aggressive, almost tactless with their opinions and criticism in a sense if Mars is in Virgo. But even more than the Sun, I would say, being in Virgo. But yeah, they're going to be somewhat of a workhorse. So Virgo, though, is not the most energetic sign in the world in physical energy, but it is very much energetic for work and practical activities, as I say. Overall, as a sign, I wouldn't say that Virgo is lacking much physical energy. They're definitely more energetic than Taurus. Definitely not as much as the Capricorn, but they are fairly energetic. Like compared to the Pisces I would say has less energy than the Virgo. So the Virgo is more energetic than the Pisces because they're more motivated by practical things rather than like spiritual things and pondering spirituality. They're more pondering practical real world things that make to-do lists a lot. Their mental energy is fast and high, maybe not necessarily fast because Earth is a slow element, but still like they have high levels of mental energy even though they're not an air sign because they are logical and they are making to-do lists all the time. They are thinking logically all the time. Their mind's always moving, which can tire them out, stress them out. But they have that sort of energy too. So Virgo can be quite an active sign. So Mars isn't a huge problem if it's in Virgo. It's not the most comfortable placement for Mars because Mars is a fire planet in its nature and not an Earth planet, and those two elements don't really work together very well. So it could be quite tensioned, but it's definitely not the worst placement in the world, and you're going to be fairly energetic as a person with Mars and Virgo. Probably not very sexual, obviously, with Mars and Virgo for obvious reasons. Um, but you are going to be quite hands-on if you do manage to have your partner relax you enough to sort of let that more carefree side of you out to play. Enough said there, I think. But yeah, so overall, Virgo, they're like a forest. So compare them to like the Taurus video I did. They're not like a green space that's been completely untouched by human activity, with obviously just the trees and the benches even, and those sort of touches that humans put in. But other than that, it's pretty much quite unedited green space and soil and all of that thing, which doesn't change. That's Taurus. Virgo, the real world example, is more like a jungle or a forest because the trees are actively growing. Of course, in the Taurus example, obviously the trees are going to be part of the field and they'll be actively growing. But the Taurus is more the grass, which of course is also actively growing. But I'm just trying to get across that it's more sort of the Virgo is more about change. The Taurus is more like the type of Earth which doesn't move. It's Taurus could almost be almost like a mountain as well, but I think that's personally more Capricorn because it's harder and denser, and the energy is heavier, which is more Capricorn as the cardinal Earth sign. But Taurus could be a mountain too, I guess, or a tree. But the thing is that Virgo is more like a even an ordered garden or almost cement that's wet. Like obviously when cement dries, it's hardened, it's likened to Capricorn's character. But when cement is still wet and it hasn't yet set, it's obviously soft and you can mold it into different shapes. Wet cement can be molded into different shapes quite easily with your bare hands, and that is like another Virgo thing. It's like they can change. You can mold them to be what you want them to be to a certain extent. Whereas obviously when it's hardened and dried, the cement turns really hard, and then you obviously can't mold it at all, and that is Capricorn. But the wet cement that you can mold easily with your hands, I would say, is another real world example of like what a Virgo is as a mutant mode. But yeah, thank you for listening to this video. Hope you got some understanding out of it, and I'll see you next time.